All right, everybody, welcome to Negotiate This, episode 3. I am Nick Segal, and today we're going to talk about overcoming guilt and resentment. Now, when I thought about that title, I probably should have done something much more uplifting, like your pathway to freedom and peace and growth. But the nuts and bolts of this thing is that we deal in guilt and resentment at times, and especially now in these close quarters, there's a wonderful opportunity to really look at these dynamics of guilt and resentment so that we can work through them and have a better experience in the environments that we're in right now. And these things transfer to every aspect of your life. So I'm 24 years old. I come out here to be an actor. And oh my gosh, I'm sorry, this was in my pocket. This is a very valuable commodity to Lily, Laura, and myself. It's a little birdie headband. So sorry, but I found it. So I'm 24 years old, and I come out here to be an actor. And my uncle is a famous actor, and he says, "Listen, you should take this seminar. It's called Insight. It's going to help you with your acting." And so that's why I took it. So I go into this, what I'm told is a 5-day seminar. And I'm sitting there, and there have been 120 people there, and I'm thinking, "What? I don't need this. I'm 24 years old. I know what I'm doing, right? I'm wise beyond my years," or so I thought. Well, when it was shared with me what is guilt and resentment and the dynamics of how we create guilt and resentment, and also how we can create the antidote so that we don't have to live from that kind of tortured place, I sat back and said, wow, there is something for me here. And the tools and the techniques that I use around guilt and resentment absolutely serve me to this day. Know this, with the time we have together, I'm going to share these dynamics with you. I'm going to share the antidotes for them, and that in real-time practical application. I'm also going to tell you a story about an arc of guilt and resentment and how they play out. But then I want to reserve some time for you to ask some questions and really put this technique to the test. And if you've got something that you want to share, then I would love us to work through that together. And I'm seeing that someone lost sound, but sounds like it's good. All right. So, and let's also look at it from the perspective of, what are we doing right now? What are the commitments that we're making that we may not be acting upon? Or what are the commitments that we want others to do that we have a relationship with on our behalf that they're not doing? Because that plays into this as well. And it's a subtle little beast, guilt and resentment. So, and yes, my uncle is George Segal. So for those of you that question came in. So let's look at what guilt is, okay? Guilt is the divide between what we perceive to be the thing that we should be doing, our belief systems around that, and the actual action of what we're doing. And when the belief of what we're supposed to be doing and should be doing differs from what we're actually doing, depending on how deep that belief system is, and how far we deviate from that belief system with the action that we take in the moment, that's a pretty good barometer of how deep and how steep in that guilt that comes forward. And I really want you to understand that we create this reality of guilt. So let's use a diet as an example, right? How many of us have looked to be on a diet? So the intention is, the belief is, the should is, I need to go on a diet. I need to lose 15 pounds or 10 pounds, 5 pounds, whatever it is. And I know that I should do this because it's going to make me healthier. I'm going to feel better about myself. I'm going to look in the mirror, all those things, right? The reasons of why we should do it. But then the action of the diet doesn't come forward. We grab the cupcake, we grab the whatever it is, and suddenly while we're eating that food that we know is not on the diet, this little trickle comes in of guilt. It's like, And we then live in that guilt mind, and that toxicity steeps in, and then we feel bad about ourselves, and we start to discount the diet, and all of those things come into the equation. Does that sound familiar to any of you? So the division, the divide between what we think we should be doing and what we actually do, that's the guilt quotient. Now, when we talk about resentment, resentment is just what we place on others outside of us. Same philosophy exists. I now look at you and I go, well, you should be doing X, Y, and Z because that's how I perceive you to be. So as opposed to taking the perception inside, we look outward, right? And I say, you're supposed to act a certain way, or a situation is supposed to be a certain way. Use this pandemic. I shouldn't have to be locked up inside. I shouldn't have to be cooped up. This doesn't make sense. I am the type of person, my actions are, I want to go out and I want to be out among the masses. And so that division of what we think others or a situation should be acting like, and yet they don't act like that, we then tend to resent them. Makes sense. So I'm now going to give you an arc, okay, of my life. So when I was one, my parents divorced. And as I grew up, my father was a weekend dad. He lived in a different part of New York State, and he remarried right away. And I took on this mantle that my dad was supposed to be a certain way. He was supposed to be there for me. I looked at the other kids around and their dads were there for them, and my dad wasn't there for me. It not only hurt, but I went into this whole design of resentment around my dad because he wasn't there for me. Well, so I took the lesson of that as I grew up, and as I stepped into being a dad, I said, well, I'm going to do a dad in a different way. I'm not going to be that dad that leaves kids when they're young. I'm going to be there for my two kids, and we have Annie, who's about to be 30, and Teddy, who turned 25 yesterday. So happy belated again. And I had this vision of how I was going to be a dad, and I was going to be there for them through thick and through thin. Well, at one point in my marriage, I decided that I needed to step away from that marriage. And the guilt that I started to feel inside of myself revolved around my two kids. So I had the modeling of my father, and I placed a resentment on him. I created a should pattern, a belief system that I was going to be this dad that would always be there. And now here I was choosing out, when Annie was 23 and Ted was 18, that I'd stayed in the relationship as long as that happened, and it was time to move on. And as I stepped away, I had these feelings that I am now acting like my father. I am stepping away. I am breaking my belief system. I'm abandoning that. And that separation created that guilt. Well, I can take this one step further. So then, as I stepped away and my kids did not want to thoroughly engage with me because I left, you left, Dad, which then hammered the guilt moment. I then took the choice to say, well, do you know what I did for you? Do you know all the things that I did for you as you were growing up, and the sacrifices that we made? You should be calling me. You should be reaching back to me. And I then created a distance with them because I chose into a resentment pattern. So the arc of me looking back at my father, then dealing from a resentment place, going into that guilt pattern, creating my own shoulds, and then passing them on to my children in the form of a resentment, you start to see how this circle worked inside of me. And I realized that I was running the same stuff on myself that I see so many around me do, and I had abandoned the ideas of what I know how to get through this. And there's a fascinating dynamic. So we're going to shift to now the antidote of it. So I hope you all understand the dynamics of what creates the guilt perspective and or the resent perspective. It's really just our shoulds versus our actions, right? There are three keys that make it so simple to work through a guilt or resentment pattern and restore the energy and the peace and the freedom that is available to us at any given moment. One is accountability, two is forgiveness, and three is acceptance. And let's break them down briefly. Now, as we get into accountability, the first thing we need to look at is the concept of blame. Now, when we don't want to be accountable, what do? If I don't want to be accountable for my actions with my kids, I blame it on them, right? Well, you should be better and you're not, so it's your fault. This is a great little mask that I find lasts for about 3 minutes, where you go, yeah, I'm right, they're wrong, I get to prove myself right. And I pass the buck on what I have control over, and I place it on someone else, and it makes me start to, I hope, feel good, but it doesn't. So when we look at accountability, and we look at it in terms of guilt and or resentment, I have two choices, right? There are two categories. So there's the action that I take, and there's my belief system around that action. If I, from an accountability place, say, all right, the action that I did is not in alignment with what I believe. It's not how I want to live my life. So either I move the action back to the alignment of the belief system, or I can stay in that mind of, well, this is the action that I take. Maybe I need to move the belief system over to the action that I take, because this is the person that I want to be. I don't want to be shackled, harnessed by the shoulds and the beliefs. That no longer resonates with me. This is the way I want to act, this is the way I want to be, and I move that consciousness of the should into an embrace of the actions that I take. So with my father, he's passed away. So I can't move his dynamic, but I can move my dynamic as how I look at my father. My father did the best that he could with what he knew at that time. And I have the choice, the ability to allow him the freedom to do whatever he wants to do. So I allow him to move into whatever space he chose, in this case, because he can't choose it anymore, to play in. And I can say, he did what he did, but my love for him, I don't have to diminish my love for my old man because he did what he did. I can restore in my own place of accountability what my love for my father was. I can claim that and say, that's true. There are things that we did together. And my part is the accountable part. I can say, I love my father, and that feels clean inside of me. So by allowing my father to do what he does, fine, and I get to stay in my peace. Now, with the guilt that I had towards myself with my kids, well, I left. That was what I needed to do in that moment. And so that's the choice that I took. As I consider my belief systems around how I should be with my kids, I can still, from the place and the actions that I have control over, look at my children and say, I love you. I am here for you. It's just a new dynamic as to how I'm going to interface with you, interact with you, love you, care for you, hug you up. But I'm doing it from a place where I took care of myself in that action. And now I look to you and I say, I invite you to play any way you want, but I'm no longer going to layer that should or that belief system on myself that I need to be a certain way. And as soon as I did that, it freed me up so beautifully to relate to my children in as loving and as clean and a free way as possible. And what also shifted was my resentment towards them of them having to be a certain way, because I gave them the freedom to be however they want to be. And so in that dynamic, we created a far greater fertile ground, a fertile, loving space for everyone to be accepting of how they want to be, and I got to be accepting of how I want to be. And so when we look at the design of accountability, there is great resource in us claiming our position. Now, we make mistakes, right? So we can feel guilty about a mistake that we made. To blame someone else does not take we don't take responsibility for ourselves in our actions and our part in that. Excuse me. So when I look at that, if I have blown it in some way, I have a choice. I blame someone else. Well, I guess I have three choices. Or I deny it, it didn't happen. Or I say, you know what? I screwed this up. The most empowering choice is to take the personal responsibility and say, I blew that. And again, I don't need to feel guilty about it because I recognize that I did something wrong. And then I can go to the other person and I can say to them, excuse me, wow, I can say to them, I did something wrong. I screwed it up. And here's all I can do to try and make it better. What they do with that information is entirely up to them. Now, they can layer their guilt on me and say, well, Nick, you shouldn't have done that. How dare you do that? What are you crazy? What do you think? I can buy into the fact that I now feel guilty because they're layering that on me. Or I can say, wait a minute, I'm doing my best to make this right. Based on the information I had in the moment or whatever my thought process was, I acted the way I did. I can't change that, but I can certainly step up right now and play to a very, very different reality and give the other person the ability to do whatever they do with that. Now, if they want to resent me, that's on them because they still are carrying the should that I should be a certain way versus honoring the fact that, well, he made a mistake. He's willing to own up to it. And now let's see how we can work through that. That's the healthiest way to move forward. But that courageous choice to be personally accountable for our own actions and then do with the spirit of, let me try and make this right, we stand the greatest opportunity to work through it and no longer feel guilty and or harbor someone else's resentment in the process. So accountability is a glorious choice that we all take. So number 2, forgiveness. So let's start with a premise. I believe that we're all doing the very best we can based on the information that we have in the moment. So what does that mean? Based on my learnings, based on my experiences, I have a good sense of my own barometer, my own metric of what is right and what is wrong. When I do something wrong, I know it. I do my best not to do things that are wrong. I do my best to do things that I believe are right because in the doing of the right, I have a more enjoyable, prosperous life. That's the reality that I claim. There are times based on the information I had, I make a poor choice and I make a mistake or I'm not thinking or whatever that issue is. If I truly believe I did the best that I could in that moment based on the information that I had, and I wasn't trying to sabotage anybody, there was nothing nefarious in what I was doing, I have a glorious opportunity to say, well, I made a mistake. Number 1, let's be accountable for it. What do I need to do to make it better? Number 2, can I take a moment to forgive myself that I remember that I was doing the best that I could and I made a mistake and use the opportunity as a learning so that I don't make the same mistake twice. But you'll notice in these antidote mindsets and in this consciousness, guilt is not present, resentment is not present. I am working proactively to create a new reality that takes much more ownership of what I'm doing. And that can be in a real estate deal, that can be in any aspect of life. So, I mean, if you consider that we thought the earth was flat at one point, right? So, we worked that out. And so when we believed that the earth was flat, we worked at a certain level. When we realized the earth was round, we changed our dynamics. It was new information, and we used that information to adapt accordingly. The past is the past. We can't change it. The more we honor the actions that we take, the actions and recognize that we were doing the best that we can, we play to the accountability of it, and we forgive ourselves along the way, we stand a much better chance of creating a freedom and a peace to be present in the moment and then move forward. So let's go to the third dynamic, acceptance. This is the mighty one. This is the big kahuna of I truly believe in many respects why we're here. Can we accept what is going on around us, not capitulate to it, not to succumb to a reality, but just accept that that reality has taken place. And when we accept the reality of what happened, I made a mistake, because we're staying on guilt and resentment here, right? If I am accountable for my actions, I scratch and claw my way to forgive myself for what I did, but with the understanding, the foundation, I did the best I could with what I knew in that moment. And then I accept that, what can I do to, one, learn from it and move on? And if someone wants to harbor something against me, that's on them. I'm doing the very best I can, and get back into that, what I'll call the graciousness of my balance, and that centered space where I can, like as I am in this moment, just look out at the trees and the blue sky and say, this is what's present. I don't need to feel guilty unless I choose to feel guilty. I don't need to resent someone or a situation unless I choose to. I can look at this and say, what's going on inside of me? How am I relating to whatever that situation was or is? And if I'm feeling guilty about it, or I'm resenting someone, I immediately go through that checklist of the checking in with the accountability. What can I do to own my part of it? How can I forgive myself? And then how can I accept? Because in the acceptance, we get to truly move on. We're in a world right now where we're in really close quarters with each other, to the degree that we can, the little things, let's call the dishes. Okay, that's one of my pet peeves. So we'll take this to the minute. My wife, Laura, knows that I'm fastidious that way. Love me for my fastidiousness, or don't. But when I see a dish in the sink, it's like, well, why don't we just take that dish into the dishwasher? It's what? It's 12 seconds more. But Laura works at a different vibe. She puts it in the sink. She goes, at some point, I'll put it in the dishwasher. Well, I walk by it and I go, ugh. So here's what I have a choice. I can resent Laura for not putting things in the dishwasher, or I can just go, you know what, Nick, you like things in the dishwasher, pick it up, rinse it off, and put it in the dishwasher, and you're now back to the pristine environment of an empty sink that you like. I don't need to feel bad towards, I love Laura. I love infinite numbers of things about her. Why would I sacrifice all of those because she left a dish in the sink? This is not an effective use of our time or our energy. So I hope that you are thinking about different things that to test this theory that may be up for you right now, something that you're feeling a little guilty about, or something resentful. It's easier to deal with resentment sometimes than our own guilt. So I'm looking at the chat, and if someone has a question that they want to ask about how to apply the situation they're in, and really just own it and say, yep, this is up for me right now. I'd love to test that out, because we can spend a lot of time sabotaging ourselves. And I believe that the greatest saboteur, personally and professionally, is when we get out of balance, and when we're not present, and we're not focused on the things that we want to create for ourselves, but we're getting that energy suck of the things we feel guilty for by the way we handle something or the way we didn't do it. That is a waste of energy. I look at those of us in the real estate business right now, and I'll speak for myself. It's like, what more could I be doing right now? That idea of I want to do more and I can't do more towards the growth of my business. And I'm feeling bad about that. And I'm seeing others out there that are making deals, and I'm not making deals right now. And I go, well, what do I got to do? And I start to feel guilty that maybe I should be doing more, right? So there's that dreaded should. And as soon as you get a should that comes up, you are starting to walk down a path of a guilt or resentment. They should do this, or I should do this, as opposed to I am doing this, I am doing that. So something that just came up, I'm resentful when I'm working with a client and they agree to work with us and then go with another realtor. Ooh, baby, That is a juicy one. So let's work through it. So we bust our asses for someone, and this one, oh golly, you know, the question used to, the comment used to come to me when the client would tell me that they've worked with another, they're about to tell me they're going to work with another client. They go, well, another agent. So I have good news and bad news. Go, okay. Good news is I found a house, and I immediately know what the bad news is because it wasn't with me. So I feel your pain on this one. The process is the same. You have free will, they have free will, right? So all we can do is set the table when working with a client to define how we would like to be treated. What are our rules of our road? What are the actions that we're going to take? What is the dynamic of the industry that this can happen? You as a client can walk into an open house and someone else can try and steal you away. That happens. I would like that not to happen. So our accountability mechanism in all of this is to be crystal clear with our potential clients, because they are only potential clients, candidly, until they close a deal with us, right? Anything less than that, we're just in this dance. But once they consummate a transaction with you, then you have a confirmed client. You have potential clients and confirmed clients, in my opinion. And even after you do one deal with you, if they need something else, they become a potential client again, because they have the free choice to do what they want to do. And in that, when we get into resentment, and I get it, I so get it, but again, they have free will too, and at the end of the day, they need a house. And if someone else can find them that house and we didn't find them that house, unless you have a buyer-broker agreement in which you'll get paid no matter what house they buy, that is part of the nature of the beast. So can you accept that that is the nature of the beast? That's question one. Are you accountable that you did everything in your power, and you claimed your worth and your authority, that this is how this dynamic works and this is what I can do for you? And then the third one in this, because they work in different orders depending on their relevance, can you forgive them that they went and found another house for someone else? Can you give them that freedom? Because as you forgive them, guess what you do? You get to free up your energy so that you can go work with someone else. And in the learning of it, and through that acceptance and the accountability and the forgiveness, maybe you hone your skills more so that you never have to experience that again, based on the way you deal with your clients and the way you articulate how you work. And you ask that in return of them. And those that give it to you, wonderful. And those that don't, maybe you don't work with them. So that's how I would work through that. Robert Brand, so hopefully that assists you, Darcy. We can see what might be shortcomings of loved ones and make decisions to live differently for our loved ones, sort of like breaking the cycle. Of course, we can copy the good qualities of the loved ones too. So thank you for the comment. The business world is fraught with this idea of, and resentment plays, it's easier to resent someone and try and understand that than sometimes it is to feel guilty, because oftentimes I find that we're not quite sure the depth of the should. We're not quite in touch with how deep-seated some of these beliefs are. And we can be layered with something that was our parents' mindset and their shoulds, and that passed down from generations. And it just gets ingrained in us at a cell level. And when we go off of that trend and we act out differently than what that deep-seated should or belief system is, we can feel guilty about something, not even realizing that we're doing it. So it's a real subtle beast. But when you're not in your loving, you give yourself the opportunity. You're not in your gratitude. You're not in those uplifting spaces. And you choose guilt, because that is a choice. It's all a choice. You deplete your energy. And what I'm about now is using this time. And this whole series is about employing and empowering my time to give the best of who I am to those that care to listen to it. And if you get a pearl, if you get something that you go, yeah, I can relate to that. I'd like to try that. Job done, mission accomplished, right? So the more, if you are susceptible to guilt, I really encourage you in this time to be vigilant in how you see yourself, how you gut check, how you're doing inside. If you're in balance and if you're in that loving space, if you're looking at the world and saying, I'm grateful for X, Y, and Z, that's where we want to be, because that's the place that you can then pick up the project, that you can look at the new idea that you want to flesh out. You can get on that Zoom call or pick up the phone and call someone and flesh an idea out, but you're doing in that fertile open space to play. If you're in resentment, and if you're in a frustration that you don't like the current reality, you stay there. You get to live in there until you either get sick and tired of it or you choose something different. One of the great ultimate antidotes for me is gratitude in the moment. I thank goodness I have my health. Thank goodness there's a roof over my head. Thank God I'm not hungry. There's water, potable water. These are the ultimate essences, right? But let's reduce it to that. Sometimes that's what it needs to be. Then I can layer what I've created over the course of time, but the work that I've done, the sacrifices that I've been made, the choices that I make, the work that I do on myself, all that folds into a reality that plays to how I see my life, how I see what's going on. And if I get into that guilt and or resentment, it just sucks that life right out of me. So vamping a little bit, is there another question, another dynamic where resentment, anything going on the home front, anything with the kids? Kids are fertile ground to, to test our own resentments. I can even think of something while we've been up here. We're fortunate enough to be in kind of Northern California right now. And boy, I would love, there's a golf course literally right, I can see the fairway from here and I can't play on it. And the resentment of we're in lockdown, this is silly. Golf is one of those great expanses where you don't need to be in and around people. Life is so expansive from that space, and I love the game. But that's not the reality right now. And so making the best of it, well, guess what? When a golf course isn't open, it looks like a big park to me. So every day, Laura, Lily, and I have been taking the stroller right across the way, and Lily frolics in this golf course, and I get to shift what is my resentment to a sense of beauty and accomplishment, and it's a sweet space. I'm looking at a question from Sam West. What if no one else is involved and you feel you did not do as good as you would have liked to do or be? Now you feel shame, not good enough, no one to blame, but still genuine discord, worry, shame, fear, because you feel time went by and you can't get it back. Such a waste. Love the question. You're right. You cannot get that time back. I've been in conversations with people. I'm going, why in God's name was I in that conversation? I certainly ain't getting those minutes back. Every action that we take has a cause and effect, right? I do something, it creates a reaction. If the reaction is a mistake, why go into a judgment when you can go into the learning? It's all energy. It's all where you place your energy and your focus. So no one else is involved. I did something that was stupid. And I went out late last night. Well, we're not going anywhere, right? I opened a bottle of wine. I opened the second bottle of wine. I got a hangover the size of Manhattan. And now I've got to play with my kid and I'm miserable. And I feel terrible that I'm not taking care of my child. Okay? How's that one? Well, all I can do is suck it up and get as much water as I can and do the best I can to be present in the situation and learn from it so that I don't repeat it. So my accountability in this moment is, okay, I'm going to pay the price of this headache, and I'm going to forgive myself that I did it and make wiser choices going forward, and accept that this is what the reality is. To me, that's the cleanest way to move through it. Shame is just you're working your belief system and you're holding it against you. It's like an anvil over your head. Put that thing down and step away. The shame, I don't think, serves any purpose other than to act as a catalyst to get us to go the other way. It's like if I have a hammer and I smash my thumb on the hammer, every time I see a hammer, I don't need to think that I'm going to smash my thumb. I can say, let's move the thumb out of the way and hit the nail this time. I mean, the metal nail, not my thumbnail. So I appreciate that question. Melissa, what if the guilt is from something that happened a long time ago? Great question. So the time has passed again, right? We can't change the past. We can only learn from it if we choose to. Again, I go back to the idea that we did the best we could based on the information that we had. Unless you purposely tried to screw it up. If you saw a house across the street and you didn't like that house and you burned that house down, well, that's a pretty severe action that you took, and you could feel guilty about it. And someone, God forbid, died as a result of it. You still can't bring that person back to life. You may go to jail for it. The accountability mechanism may be forced upon you. But in the final analysis, you can't change it. It happened. Your whole life could be dedicated to taking care of that family. Your whole life could be taken care of to burn victims. Your whole life could be dedicated to positive pursuits that take that terrible, horrific situation and do your best to make it better. Because all we have is the present and a sincere intention to do something about it to make life better. And so I would suggest that the action was what the action was. Your belief system was different at the time, or it was a different belief system that was forced down upon you. That belief system may still exist outside of you, but it doesn't need to exist inside of you. So either move the belief system and or take action to then make it better so that you don't have to repeat the mistake. That would be how I would attend to that. Rebecca, when I feel that I should do something, I ask why. Often the answer to the why makes me want to do the thing. Now I do almost everything because I want to. Life is better. Excellent. Okay, so should is used in a positive sense. Should is just a word. So I love the clarification. I look at that in the following form, that how many of us have said, well, I have to do this? And I was like, oh, I have to do that. Then there's a sense of obligation that comes with it. From my perspective, I choose to do this. I choose to do this because it's going to move me forward. So let's see how we apply that. I feel that I should do something. I want to do something. It's in alignment with my why. Great. So you're choosing forward. You're not in should at all. You're not in the consciousness of a negative should. It's like, yeah, I'm choosing. That's a very proactive state for me because I'm connected to why I'm doing it, and then I move the ball forward to go get it. And that's a great space to be. But, you'll hear me when I talk with people, they go, well, I have to do this. I go, do you have to or do you choose to? It almost becomes a little annoying to them, but I hope they get the spirit of why I do it. It's because it's all a choice. And when we're choosing, we're in empowerment. And I look at this time, and so let's play that out for a second. How many of us feel you should do something that's connected to your why and for your benefit? Are you doing it? The coffee encourages that I do, I guess on average about 5 days a week. And I love doing them. It's fascinating dynamic. The whole design of that is to encourage myself, first and foremost, and everybody listening in to go for it, to go for whatever's present and whatever you want in your life. I made a challenge to everybody that you made the calls. It was probably a month ago now. You made the calls to everybody that the easy ones, right? The ones you want to check into. Now make a call to someone that is not so easy. And my sister was present. I haven't spoken to my sister for about coming on 4 years. And it's funny, I almost forgot why I stopped communicating with her. But I have a wonderful relationship with my nephew, who is my sister's son, and a lot of love there. And I realized less about from a place of guilt, but more of a place of, this is silly. I've grown up with my sister. She's my flesh and blood. Let's rekindle that relationship. Now, nothing may come of it, but I took a new action that wasn't based on any attachment to how she was going to receive it. It was just, I made a suggestion to have an unpleasant call, or a call that could be sticky, just to work through it and see what happens. And the action that I took was wonderful. And my sister's now sent me a painting. She's a wonderful artist. She's now been able to connect with Lily and get to know Laura a little bit. But the reconnection came simply because of a coffee and courage moment of, hey, pick up the phone and call someone where maybe there's a little stickiness, or a little something where you'd like to clear the air. Because again, it's one more opportunity to free up energy to go do the things that we want to do. If we've got all these drags on us, and guilt and resentment, I should do this, and that's not right, and what if I make a mistake? Listen, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. But if you go into it with the best information that you've got, you do your best to prepare for what's going to happen. Yeah, you may screw it up. It may not work, but you gave it a shot, and you can learn from everything, and then you can grow and expand from it. Those of us that are just huddled up and waiting for this to end and not taking full advantage of the time that's available to us, I think we do ourselves a disservice. So here I am, just playing in a world of social media and Zoom calls, just as a way to share what I'm doing. And I'm hoping that whatever your talents are, whatever your gifts, or whatever inspires you, that you're sharing that as well. And we dive into the deep end, as we like to say in our team. Any other questions that may be coming forward? Does this make sense? Does this resonate with you? I'd love your thoughts. It's a very interesting dynamic when I'm just talking to a little white dot behind, in front of a little camera. It's tough to get feedback in real time. I'm much better when I'm engaging in real time with people. So any thoughts or questions that come up, would love to hear them. So I'm going to do this every Thursday at 1:00. You are always welcome to join. This link that you have right now is the link that will always gain you access to it. If you have a topic or a suggestion that you'd like me to dive into and give you my perspective on, happy to do it. If you're looking for strategic ways to engage more fully, if you have a specific topic in mind, happy to explore that. You can give me you can direct message me through my Instagram account at Nick Segal. You can tune into hashtag Coffee and Courage, and you can expand on something that I'm talking about from that perspective. Melissa has asked the question, where do my teachings come from? They come from life, my willingness to really explore it. And there's a wonderful gentleman by the name of John Roger. And I was tapped into that through Insight Seminars at the tender age of 24. And I'm now on the board of Insight Seminars. And there's another wonderful organization that extends those teachings of this glorious man and wise man and John Roger through the University of Santa Monica. Educare is a wonderful vehicle where Stu Semigran and his wife, Candace Semigran, work with kids in the inner city, and they're educating them to these teachings and these philosophies of loving first and empowering choices. And that's how I live my life. That was the dynamics that created Partners Trust. That was the intentionality of it, to do good. That's where my joy comes from. If you go to my site, nicksegal.com, you'll see the coaching work that I'm doing with people. It's about complacency bores me. live to learn and to grow and then to share it. And On Your Terms is all about this is the 30-second plug for Nick Segal's works. But On Your Terms is a great book with my wife Laura, but it speaks to a lot of these things. So again, the invitation is front and center. If you've got something you'd like to share and discuss, we can keep expanding on that. Elizabeth, great. It's been easier to come to a place of forgiveness with myself as I get older. I think it sends such a great message for my kids when I can laugh off my mistakes and take ownership of the things I do wrong. It has made really interesting conversations at home. I have a 13-year-old and 11-year-old. Elizabeth, that is the key. We make mistakes as part of the human condition. How quickly can we laugh about it? If we're going to laugh about it at some point, why not laugh about it now? A dear friend of mine, John Morton, keeps reminding me and us about that idea that eventually it gets funny. I mean, because all mistakes are funny if we see it through that lens. And the value of a mistake is how we learn from it. So I'm doing that with Lily, and I'm doing that with my kids, Annie and Ted, as much as they will allow it, to invite the conversations around what did we learn from that? How do we learn from that? In this time of seclusion, the more we can embrace our communication styles with each other and build the habits that create opportunity for us to love each other more. Because even when we're screaming at each other, it's still an expression of loving in a bizarre way, because we care enough to scream at them, right? Because if we didn't care enough to scream at them, we'd just walk out the door and say, we'll see you later. So that's what I got. Michael Carlin, thanks so much for checking in to you all. I so appreciate you being here. Again, I'll bring in my topic next week, but if you got one for me, I'd love to hear it. No sense talking if there's nothing to say. So to you all, thank you. Have a beautiful and grateful day. I'll talk to you soon.